Two more cases of COVID-19 in Hong Kong, the 8th consecutive day of single-digit new infections. A government public health advisor believes social distancing measures will likely continue beyond Thursday.
If it was a mistake is a mistake. But if they were knowingly responsible, then there should be consequences.
And Donald Trump warns China could face consequences for the coronavirus pandemic.
Good evening and welcome. Two more COVID-19 cases have brought the city's total to 1,025.
It marks the 8th consecutive day of single-digit increases, but authorities say there may still be some silent transmission in the community. A 35-year-old man who returned to Hong Kong from the UK on Friday has tested positive for the virus while undergoing home quarantine in Hong Kong. The other patient, a 47-year-old airport ground staff member of Virgin Airlines, was mostly active in Tung Chung, where she lives during the incubation period. While she's mainly in charge of handling travelers arriving from the UK, her source of infection remains unknown.
The detection of locally acquired case reflect that there's some silent transmission in the community, and she has quite a number of colleagues not so close contact with her, but still there may be a risk of silent transmission. You never know. So we will try to put all her co-workers, including those who are frontline workers, that amounts to around 69. We will test them and check whether they still have any active infection.
With the city recording single-digit increases of new infections for 8 days in a row, is it time for social distancing to be relaxed?
The measures may depend on the public health situation, whether the cases has been controlled or the case number, but also depends on various other factors that may be under the consideration of the government.
Also starting tomorrow, all travelers will be given an extra bottle to collect their second deep throat saliva specimen, which must be returned on their 12th day of quarantine. Results will come in the next day, which means all tests will be done within the 2-week mandatory quarantine. A respiratory health expert believes the government will extend some of the social distancing measures set to expire next week. As Caleb Long reports, he also thinks the chance of another major outbreak in Hong Kong is slim.
Over the past 7 days, the daily increase of new infections in Hong Kong has dropped to single digits. However, a respiratory health expert warned that the epidemic is not over just yet.
The last confirmed case, local case in Hong Kong was actually on the 9th of April. And we need to have 2 incubation periods free of local case to call it safe. So we have to wait till early May, at least, to make sure there's no local case, no unusual outbreak before it is actually a safe area.
He believes it's not time for the government to relax its social distancing measures.
We have to wait till 28 days from the 9th of April. So I'm sure the government will extend the infection control measures until sometime in May, just to make sure there's no local outbreak, to break the chain of transmission in the community.
However, Hui thinks the chance of having another major local outbreak is minimal.
I think the government has taken very effective infection control measures as early as January. And there is also enhanced social distancing measures in the recent weeks. I think all these infection control measures are actually quite effective. And I think we have done quite well. I think we are unlikely to have another major outbreak.
Members of the public are still advised to wear masks, as Hui is not expecting a vaccine against COVID-19 to be introduced until mid-next year, the earliest. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Mainland authorities reported 16 more coronavirus cases, with most located in Heilongjiang and Shanghai. Some 50 recent cases in Heilongjiang are linked to a student returning from the U.S. The student arrived last month and tested negative twice during her home quarantine. but she tested positive for the virus a week later, and she might have infected some of her neighbors. Meanwhile, an expert from the Wuhan Institute of Virology denied any link of the coronavirus outbreak to his laboratory, calling it impossible. The research lab had been rumored to be the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic.
As pressure mounts to reopen the U.S. economy, President Donald Trump has announced the coronavirus sweeping across the country has peaked. He also had a warning for the Chinese government. With a presidential election looming, Donald Trump is eager for states to ease restrictions meant to control the spread of the coronavirus. But hotspots continue to emerge, and experts warn that moving too fast could prove disastrous. Still, at the White House on Saturday, Trump pointed to increased testing and claimed there are positive signs that the virus has passed its peak.
Nationwide, we've now conducted over 4 million tests. It's double the number conducted by any other country on Earth. So that's more than 2 times, actually, the number conducted by any other country on Earth. You hear so much about testing. What we've done is incredible in testing.
Trump announced that a few states will allow certain businesses to open next week while still requiring social distancing precautions. A few other states have started to advise non-essential businesses to prepare for a phased opening from May 1st. Trump also dangled the prospect of consequences as he ratcheted up criticism of China's handling of the outbreak.
If it was a mistake is a mistake. But if they were knowingly responsible, yeah, then there should be consequences.
He did not elaborate on what actions the U.S. might take. Trump and senior aides have accused China of a lack of transparency since the coronavirus broke out. New York's governor announced the daily increase in coronavirus deaths in his state has dropped under 550 for the first time in more than 2 weeks. Hospitalizations also continue to decline. Meanwhile, calls to ease pandemic restrictions are growing louder. In one of the latest demonstrations, small government groups and Trump supporters converged on the Texas Capitol. Figures show Texas ranks last in the U.S. in testing per capita, with more than 428 coronavirus-related deaths. The state's governor says restrictions will begin easing next week. Canada and the United States have agreed to extend border restrictions for another 30 days to help control the spread of the coronavirus. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said the agreement will keep the border closed to non-essential travel. He said the extension of the closure would keep people on both sides of the border safe amid the coronavirus pandemic. President Donald Trump of the U.S. said Wednesday the U.S.-Canada border would be among the first borders to open. It was closed on March 18th. About 200,000 people cross the border daily.
Spain joined Italy as the second European country to register 20,000 deaths from the coronavirus. The two nations continue to preach patience in the fight against COVID-19, despite calls to ease some social distancing measures. Peter Cavales has the details.
Spain's government will seek to extend a nationwide lockdown until May 9th, about 2 weeks longer than planned. But Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says they will start easing restrictions for children April 27th. The government placed a ban on kids leaving their home during the strict lockdown that has brought economic activity to a near standstill in the country. A region in eastern France hit particularly hard by the virus has carried out tests for all nursing home residents and staff of a facility founded by nuns as a hospital in the 17th century. The clinic poses particular problems for virus prevention, with small rooms and long corridors. Nursing homes in France have suffered disproportionately from the coronavirus pandemic. More than a third of the country's 17,000 coronavirus victims have died in care homes. Italy's extraordinary commissioner for the coronavirus emergency warned regional governments to be cautious in pitting health concerns against economic worries when deciding to ease some lockdown measures. The warning came after authorities pressed the central government to start relaxing some measures on factories and many other businesses. The British government insisted it has enough ventilators to manage the coronavirus crisis. Community Secretary Robert Jenrick confirmed the country's health service has 10,000 ventilators and 400,000 protective gowns. This follows widespread criticism from hospital staff who said they lacked enough protective gear to safely treat patients. And during these extraordinary times, German music fans had a rare opportunity to attend a live performance while complying with the country's social distancing regulations. A local band in Cologne took to the stage at a drive-in cinema. The performance was broadcast on a big screen and the sound was transmitted to the cars wirelessly. People were not allowed to get out of the vehicles. Proceeds of the concert will go to employees of the Cologne University Hospital. Peter Caveos, TVB News.
South Korea recorded 8 new coronavirus cases, its lowest daily total in 2 months. Despite that, the country has extended its social distancing policy for another 16 days. Officials are relaxing some measures, though, as churches will no longer have to close, while some sports events could resume but without crowds. Japan's government faces complaints after giving out dirty masks. Reports from 80 municipalities say the masks came with stains, dust and other contamination. They are among a million the government started sending to pregnant women as a priority last week. Fast food giant McDonald's will suspend all operations in Singapore for 2 weeks after 7 of its employees tested positive for the coronavirus. It said it would continue to pay its 10,000 workers in the city-state, which reported a record daily jump of 942 new infections Saturday. And still ahead, repeatedly revised SAR government statements about Article 22 of the Basic Law and Beijing's liaison office. Former U.S. Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill dies.
Welcome back to TVB News. The SAR government is backtracking on its earlier statements about Article 22, the Basic Law, and the central government's liaison office in the city.
At the center of controversy is whether the liaison office is bound by Article 22 restrictions. Haley Joe reports.
The SAR government issued 3 statements within the span of a few hours, changing its description of the central government's liaison office, which has been operating in the city since 2000. In its first English statement published at 9:05 p.m. last night, the government said the liaison office is one of the 3 organizations set up in the Hong Kong SAR by the central government in accordance with Article 22, Paragraph 2 of the Basic Law. And it said the liaison office and its personnel shall abide by the laws of the Hong Kong SAR in accordance with Article 22, Paragraph 3 of the Basic Law. Article 22 of the Basic Law says no department of the Central People's Government and no province, autonomous region or municipality directly under the central government may interfere in the affairs which the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region administers on its own in accordance with this law. Article 22 also says all offices set up in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region by departments of the central government or by provinces, autonomous regions, or municipalities directly under the central government, and the personnel of these offices shall abide by the laws of the region. However, in its second statement issued at 11:47 p.m., the government dropped all the mentions about Article 22 and said the statement supersedes the previous one. And again, at 1:22 a.m. came another statement. The government said the liaison office was set up directly by the Central People's Government and not by its departments, as stated in Article 22 of the Basic Law, thus implying the liaison office is not bound by the article. And that's exactly what the liaison office said on Friday. Regina Ip, a pro-establishment lawmaker, agrees, saying the first SAR government statement just shows a misunderstanding on the part of the local government.
Hong Kong Macau Affairs Office and the liaison office, they are in fact part of the Central People's Government. So they are not included in the department. So first press release reflects a basic misunderstanding of the Basic Law.
But a pan-democratic legislator, Alvin Young, doesn't think it was a mere mistake.
It's a flip-flop. It's not a mere mistake. It's quite obvious that the Hong Kong government, in the first statement, they were trying to be consistent with themselves. The liaison office is subject to Article 22. If that has been the position of the Hong Kong government over the past decade or two, and right now, all of a sudden, when they find out that is inconsistent with the liaison office position, they have to change themselves.
Young says stating that the liaison office has the right to intervene in the city's internal affairs puts it above the law, in denial of the basic law.
It makes Article 22 a useless tool by lifting that sort of restrictions or by redefining Article 22 and make the liaison office above Article 22. Then what is the point of Article 22 right now?
Haley Zhou, TVB News.
The U.S. government condemned the arrests of 15 prominent pro-democracy figures in Hong Kong. So did some other governments and legal professional bodies around the world. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Beijing and its representatives in Hong Kong continue to take actions inconsistent with commitments made under the Sino-British Joint Declaration. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi urged President Donald Trump to implement the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. Britain's Foreign Office said the right to peaceful protest is protected in both the Joint Declaration and the Basic Law. Here in Hong Kong, the Commissioner's Office of the Foreign Ministry urged foreign governments not to interfere in China's internal affairs. The office also accused some foreign politicians of trying to whitewash, condone and exonerate the anti-China troublemakers in Hong Kong.
The government is bracing for higher unemployment numbers due to the COVID-19 pandemic. That's why some officials are pledging to create thousands of new jobs to stem the impact of the outbreak. Dong Yao-ne has more.
Hong Kong's unemployment rate is likely to keep rising after reaching a 9-year high of 3.7% in February. First quarter figures are expected Monday, but officials are warning of a worsening economic situation. Chief Secretary Matthew Cheung wrote on his blog that the jobless rate for January to March is expected to increase, as February data has yet to show the impact of the global pandemic. Meanwhile, a new survey estimates nearly 30% of employees face layoffs due to the epidemic. Union leaders from multiple sectors are pushing the government to set up subsidies for the jobless. They are also blasting the recent government financial aid package for not treating self-employed workers equally.
They should be treated as like any ordinary employees. They should entitle $9,000 like any other still employed workers in the company.
The Federation of Trade Unions is also urging the government to support those unable to pay off their loans because of layoffs due to the epidemic. To curb unemployment, the Chief Secretary vowed to create some 30,000 jobs in 2 years in both the public and private sectors.
The government also expects to hire more than 10,000 civil servants this year. It will also recruit 5,000 interns, more than double last year's total.
Today, Financial Secretary Paul Chan says he believes the new relief package would help slow the unemployment rate. But the measures have not been well received from those missing out on the funding. Zhong Yao-ne, TVB News.
Overseas again, Paul O'Neill, a former U.S. Treasury Secretary who broke with former President George W. Bush over tax policy, has died at the age of 84. Former head of aluminum giant Alcoa, O'Neill served as Treasury Secretary from 2001 to late 2002. He was forced to resign after he objected to a second round of cuts because of the impact on deficits. O'Neill later co-wrote an explosive book covering his 2 years in the administration. He contended the administration began planning the overthrow of Iraqi President Saddam Hussein right after Bush took office, 8 months before the September 11th terrorist attacks. O'Neill died at his home in Pittsburgh after battling lung cancer for the last couple of years.
And that is the news. Thanks for watching.
Bye for now.